At 56, Phil Mickelson's former home club has voted to permanently scrap his name from historic display boards. This isn't a quiet membership review, it's an execution. The six-time major winner has been erased by the very people who once celebrated him, and the Farms Golf Club just made sure his name will never hang on their walls again. And honestly, the pure audacity of it makes my blood run cold. Regular golfers save for a decade just to afford a guest pass at a place like the Farms, yet these country club elites are busy scrubbing the name of the greatest left-handed player to ever live over a single allegation. It feels like a witch hunt, erasing history to protect their pristine, gated reputation. It's a gutless move, proving these boards care more about their image than the man who put them on the map. But look past the surface outrage. This wasn't an emotional vote by outraged members. It was a calculated risk assessment by the club's legal team. They realized that keeping Phil's name on that wall was a liability ticking time bomb, and they called it the liability erasure. They didn't just remove him, they permanently severed ties to avoid a PR catastrophe. Let me take you inside that boardroom and onto the fairway where Phil got the news mid-round. Personally, I think the club made a ruthless business decision. Do you agree, or do you think they went too far? Drop it below. And if deep dive golf investigations are your thing, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. So picture this. It's a quiet spring afternoon at the Farms Golf Club in Rancho, Santa Fe, California. The sun is out, the fairways are pristine, and Phil Mickelson is doing what he has done thousands of times before, playing a casual round at his home course. He is on the back nine, probably clearing his mind, maybe working on a few shots, just being Phil at a place that has always felt like his sanctuary. Nothing about that day seemed unusual, until the club official walked onto the fairway. That moment changed everything. The official didn't call him to the clubhouse after his round. He didn't wait for Phil to finish the hole. He walked right out onto the grass, mid-swing, and pulled Phil aside. Whatever was said on that fairway, the message was clear. You need to leave. Not after you sign the scorecard. Not after you clean your clubs. Now. Right now. Phil Mickelson, the six-time major champion, the man who put San Diego golf on the map, was being escorted off his own home course. Think about the humiliation in that moment. Golfers understand the sanctity of the course. It's where you go to escape, to think, to feel at peace, to be pulled off mid-round, not for an injury, not for a family emergency, but because the club you have called home for decades has just decided you are no longer welcome. That is a level of embarrassment that most of us can't even imagine. Phil didn't finish his round. He walked off, bag slung over his shoulder, probably knowing that the vote was already happening without him. And here is the crucial detail that makes this story so brutal. Phil didn't resign his membership. The Farms didn't quietly ask him to step away. He was expelled. That is a very different thing. Resigning gives you dignity. It allows you to say, I made a decision. Expulsion is a judgment. It is the club saying, we have decided you do not belong here anymore. And they made that decision while he was still on the property, still holding his clubs, still wearing his golf shoes. They couldn't even wait until he was off the grounds. The Farms Golf Club is not some random public course. This is a private, exclusive club in one of the wealthiest areas of Southern California. The members are not just golfers, they are business leaders, executives, people who value reputation above everything else. And in their eyes, Phil's reputation had become a liability. They didn't just want him gone, they wanted the world to know he was gone. They wanted the permanent record to show that they had made a choice and they had chosen against him. Phil wasn't just a member there, he was part of that culture, part of that tradition. Now let's be clear about something. This wasn't a sudden decision. The Farms didn't wake up one morning and decide to erase Phil Mickelson. This was the culmination of weeks, maybe months, of investigation, discussion, and backroom maneuvering. The complaint came first, then the investigation, then the vote, and then, finally, the execution on the fairway. Phil walked into that round as a member of the Farms Golf Club. He walked out as a man whose name would never be spoken in that clubhouse again. Yet, as shocking as that moment on the fairway was, it is only the beginning of this story. The ejection itself is not what will define this saga. It is the reason behind it. We are not there yet. We are just walking up to the clubhouse door. To understand why this vote happened, and why it hit Phil so hard, you first have to understand what the farms meant to him. And I don't mean just as a place to play golf. I mean as his home, his sanctuary, the place where he felt safe from the chaos of the professional tour. Phil Mickelson is a San Diego native. He was born and raised in the area, and he never really left. While other players moved to Florida or Texas for tax benefits or easier travel, Phil stayed close to home. The Farms Golf Club was his backyard course. It was where he went when he wanted to escape the media, the cameras, the pressure of major championships. It was where he could just be Phil. Not Phil Mickelson, the six-time major winner. Not the guy who had just won the PGA Championship at 51. Just a guy hitting balls with his buddies. His connection to San Diego runs deeper than golf. This is where he grew up, where he learned the game, where he fell in love with competition. Every street corner, every practice green, every familiar face in the clubhouse reminded him of who he was before the fame. The Farms was the place where he could escape the noise and just be a local kid who happened to be really good at hitting a ball. That is why this betrayal cuts so deep. It came from the people who knew him best. The club itself sits on some of the most beautiful land in Southern California. Rolling hills, perfectly manicured fairways, a clubhouse that oozes old money elegance. It's the kind of place where the members don't just play golf. They network, they make deals, they build relationships. For decades, Phil was the star of that show. He wasn't just a member, he was the member. When people thought of the Farms, they thought of Phil Mickelson. He was the face of the club, the reason some people even knew it existed beyond the gated entrance. And Phil gave back to the club in ways that money can't buy. He brought major championship trophies to the clubhouse. He let members play practice rounds with him. He hosted charity events that raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for local causes. When the Farms wanted to show off to potential new members, they talked about Phil. When they wanted to host big events, they used Phil's name to draw crowds. So for the board to turn around and erase him, they had to have a reason that outweighed all of that history, all of that goodwill, all of that money. And that reason, as we are about to find out, was not a petty dispute or a simple misunderstanding. The reason the board turned on Phil was something that no amount of trophies or charity work could fix. A single complaint that changed everything. That complaint came from an employee, a staff member at the Farms Golf Club who had worked there long enough to know the members by name. This person wasn't a rival, wasn't a competitor, wasn't someone with an axe to grind. This was someone who worked for the club, someone who was supposed to be invisible, someone who served the members without question. And when they came forward, the club had to make a choice: believe their employee or protect their star member. Imagine the courage it took for that staff member to speak up. They knew exactly who Phil Mickelson was. They knew his status, his wealth, his connections. They knew that going up against a legend would invite scrutiny, doubt, and possibly retaliation. But they did it anyway. That takes a level of conviction that cannot be faked. And the club recognized that courage by acting immediately. They didn't minimize the complaint. They didn't try to brush it aside. They took it seriously from the very first moment. Then came the investigation. The Farms didn't rely on their own internal resources. They hired an external independent firm to investigate the complaint. That is a significant step. When a club hires outsiders to investigate one of their most famous members, it means they are preparing for the worst. They are building a case. They are gathering evidence that will hold up to scrutiny, because they know that Phil Mickelson has the money and the lawyers to fight back. That investigation produced findings that the board could not ignore. But before we get to what those findings were, we need to talk about how Phil responded, because his defense, or what passed for one, may have made everything worse. The investigation took weeks. During that time, Phil was not suspended. He was still allowed on the property, still allowed to play, still allowed to use the facilities. But everyone knew the clock was ticking. The board was waiting for a report. And when that report came back, it was damning enough that the board didn't just revoke his membership, they voted to make it permanent. Phil didn't accept the decision quietly. His attorney, Tom Clare, stepped into the spotlight. Clare is a well-known figure in the sports world. He has represented athletes in high-profile cases before. He knows how to manage a crisis, and his strategy was simple: attack the credibility of the complaint and promise that evidence would prove Phil's innocence. Clare issued a statement claiming that there was objective video evidence showing the incident didn't happen the way the staff member described. He didn't just say Phil was innocent. He said the video would prove it. He made a specific, verifiable claim. It was a bold move, one that seemed designed to silence the critics and make the club back down. But here is the problem with making a bold claim like that. When you promise evidence and then fail to produce it, the backlash is worse than if you had said nothing at all. Claire's statement set an expectation. It raised hopes. It made Phil's supporters believe that the whole thing was a misunderstanding that would soon be cleared up. And when that evidence never appeared, those same supporters were left feeling betrayed and confused. The strategy backfired spectacularly. Then everything fell apart. Golf Digest, the publication that first broke the story, asked to see the video. They wanted to verify the claim. They wanted to run with the exoneration. But the video never materialized. When pressed, Claire shifted his position. He started talking about defamation and misinformation. He threatened to sue bloggers and social media users, but he never produced the video. This is where the story takes a dark turn, because when the video didn't appear, the question on everyone's lips was simple. Was it a bluff or was it a lie? The Farms Golf Club confirmed that there was no video of the incident. The interaction between Phil and the staff member happened in an area of the club that didn't have cameras, so when Claire said there was video evidence, he was either mistaken or he was hoping no one would call his bluff. Either way, the claim collapsed. And when it collapsed, so did Phil's credibility. Think about what that does to a defense. You cannot say, the video will prove it, and then, when asked, pretend you never said it. You cannot threaten to sue everyone who repeats the allegation while offering no evidence to counter it. The court of public opinion is not a courtroom. It doesn't require proof beyond reasonable doubt. It requires credibility. And Phil's credibility took a massive hit. But what exactly was in the complaint that prompted the investigation, the video bluff, and the eventual permanent vote? That is the question we've been circling since the beginning. And now, finally, we are going to answer it. After the investigation concluded, the board faced a decision. They could suspend Phil, wait for the legal process to play out, and see if the whole thing blew over. Or they could make a statement. They chose the statement, and the statement was as harsh as it gets. The vote was not a close call. According to sources, the membership voted overwhelmingly to permanently revoke Phil's membership and remove his name from the historic display boards. Not suspend, not table for later discussion. Permanent. That word carries weight. Permanent means no appeals. Permanent means the decision is irreversible. Permanent means that even if Phil is later vindicated in court, his name will never hang on that wall again. Think about what it means for a membership to vote that way. These are people who had seen Phil at his best and his worst. They had cheered for him, dined with him, shared stories with him. Voting to erase him was not a casual decision. It was a declaration. It was the membership saying, collectively, we have heard the evidence, and we choose to believe the staff member over you. That is a devastating judgment for any human being to endure, especially one who considered these people his friends. Think about the psychology of those members. These are not random people. These are people who knew Phil for decades. They played golf with him. They attended his charity events. They celebrated his major victories. Many of them probably considered themselves his friends. And yet, when they heard the testimony from the investigation, they decided to vote him out anyway. That tells you that the evidence they saw must have been compelling enough to overcome decades of personal relationships. And what was that evidence? According to multiple sources who spoke to Golf Digest, the complaint involved an incident of a serious nature, one that the club's investigators found credible enough to recommend permanent expulsion. The exact details have not been made public, and the staff member's identity has been protected. But the outcome speaks for itself. The board didn't just believe the complaint, they believed it so strongly that they were willing to erase one of the most famous names in golf history from their walls. It also tells you that the board was terrified of the legal liability. The Farms Golf Club is a private institution. They have insurance, they have lawyers, they have deep pockets, but they also have reputations to protect. In the modern era, where allegations of misconduct can destroy a business in days, the board decided that protecting the club's reputation was more important than protecting Phil's legacy. They made a business decision, not a personal one. If the dominoes keep falling, Phil Mickelson could find himself banned from every private club in Southern California, a man with no home course, no sanctuary, no place to call his own. And the rumors suggest that the Farms is not alone. It has been reported that Phil may also be asked to leave the Madison Club and the Bridges, two other exclusive clubs in Southern California. If true, that means the Farms' decision is just the first domino to fall. The golf world is watching to see if other clubs follow suit. That brings us to one of the most telling parts of this entire saga: the silence from the rest of the golf world. When Phil Mickelson left the PGA Tour for LIV Golf, his former colleagues were vocal. They criticized him, they questioned his loyalty, they called him out publicly. But now, when he needs them the most, where are they? Tiger Woods has said nothing publicly about this incident. Rory McIlroy has said nothing. Justin Thomas, who was so quick to criticize the USGA's rollback, has said nothing about Phil's expulsion. The silence is deafening. And in the world of professional golf, silence is often louder than any statement. Think about what that silence means. These are players who have known Phil for decades. They have shared fairways with him. They have competed against him. They have watched him make history. And yet, not one of them has stepped forward to defend him. Not one has said, "I know Phil, and this doesn't sound like him." Not one has expressed doubt about the investigation. That silence is a verdict in itself, and it tells you everything you need to know about how the golf establishment views Phil Mickelson now. The silence suggests that they either believe the allegations are credible, or they are too afraid to be associated with Phil's defense. And why wouldn't they be? Phil has become a controversial figure over the last few years. His decision to join LIV Golf alienated him from the establishment. His comments about the PGA Tour burned bridges that took decades to build. He went from being the most beloved player on tour to being a divisive figure who many people considered a traitor to the game. It is worth remembering that Phil was once the most popular player on tour. Fans adored him. Sponsors lined up to work with him. The media loved his candid, sometimes reckless honesty. He was the anti-Tiger, accessible, emotional, fallible. That is what made his fall so painful to watch. The same qualities that made him beloved also made him vulnerable. And when the allegations came, those who had once defended him found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew. So when this complaint came out, there weren't many people rushing to his defense. He had spent years burning bridges, and now he needed those bridges to survive, and they were already ashes. It is a tragic irony. Phil Mickelson built his career on being the people's champion, the guy who smiled at the fans, the guy who signed autographs for hours, the guy who gave hilarious self-deprecating interviews. He was the anti-Tiger, approachable, relatable, human. And now, that same human quality is what has made his fall so dramatic. The fans who loved him are watching with a mix of disbelief and disappointment. They remember the 2021 PGA Championship, when Phil became the oldest major winner in history. They remember the fist pumps, the cheeky grin, the left-handed wizardry. And now they have to reconcile that memory with the man who was expelled from his home club and whose name was erased from the walls. But the biggest tragedy is the one that happened in the quiet of the Farms clubhouse. The display boards. The historic display boards that hung on the walls for decades. Those boards weren't just pieces of wood with names on them. They were a record of history. They were a testament to the great players who had walked through the doors of the Farms Golf Club. And Phil's name was one of the most prominent on those boards. He wasn't just a member, he was a legend. And now his name is gone, permanently removed, chiseled out of history by the people who once celebrated him. The Farms didn't just revoke his membership, they erased his legacy. That is a level of punishment that goes far beyond a simple expulsion. It is a statement. It is the board saying, "You are no longer part of our history. You are no longer part of our history. We are moving on without you, and we are taking your name with us." So what does this mean for Phil Mickelson? The man who was once the greatest left-handed player in golf history is now a man without a home course. He is 56 years old. He has not played much golf in 2026. He withdrew from tournaments citing family health issues. He missed the Masters, the PGA Championship, the US Open, the tournaments that defined his career. And now, his home club has voted to permanently erase him. His legacy is forever split. There is the Phil Mickelson who won 6 majors, who pulled off the impossible at 51 at the PGA Championship, who was one of the most beloved figures in sports. And there is the Phil Mickelson who was expelled from his home club, whose name was removed from historic display boards, whose peers refused to defend him. Those two versions of Phil Mickelson exist in the same timeline. They cannot be reconciled. They will coexist forever. And whether the complaint was true or false, whether the club made the right decision or overreacted, the damage is done. Phil Mickelson's name will never hang on that wall again. The players who once celebrated him will not speak his name. The fans who loved him will have to reconcile their admiration with the allegations that ended his home course legacy. He may still be in the Hall of Fame. He may still have 6 major championships. But the Farms Golf Club has made it clear that, to them, he will always be the member who was voted out, permanently. The Farms didn't just remove a name from a wall, they removed a chapter of golf history, and that chapter is closed forever.